Date: February 18th, 2259. This is Detective Frankie Wright, conducting preliminary interview with primary suspect in Project Exodus case filed under 371/27. State your names and designations for the record.
You can call me Link. Everyone does. Arden Thompson, attorney.
Alright. Link, what's your current designation at Project Exodus?
None, detective.
But you are still employed by Exoterra, the firm that leads the project for Homebase?
Was, detective.
Now don't be difficult, Link. What did you do for them? Why are they paying for your lawyer?
Chief engineer on board the tertiary wormhole relay station of Project Exodus. Does that answer your question?
Somewhat.
If you allow me to tell you what happened, you'll understand why I'm no longer with the project, or the firm that hired me in the first place.
You mean you want to confess?
I'll tell you what happened, and then you can tell me if I'm confessing to a crime, or if I've prevented a disaster. A bigger disaster. I must protest!
Shush you! Do you work for Link or Exoterra? Link, I'm leaving it up to you. Do you want to tell me what happened?
Clearly. Willing and eager. That's why I came here of my own free will. Wait a minute. Think this through. Whatever you say can be used against you. You're looking at the death penalty. So you do work for me.
Let Link speak.
Off the record, then.
Not possible.
I want it on record.
Then we've agreed. Can you say that you are of sound mind and reason, Link?
TBD.
By me?
Sure.
Okay. However, if I suspect your mental well-being at any point during this interview, I'll have to ask for a psych eval. And with that out of the way, let's begin, shall we? What made you finally come out of hiding?
Oh, no. I'm telling this story. I'll decide when it begins.
Now, don't push me, Link. I've already been very open-minded with you.
Were you? Let's see how open-minded you can get, detective.
Fine. I'm listening.
Several moments before the station went up in flames, taking the entire relay along with it, a few things happened simultaneously. The wormhole opened unprompted for the second time since I had been brought on as chief. The station lost power, leaving the wormhole open and unstable. And, mind you, all of this was happening while Wrench and Buzz, my associates, were on the surface of the planet fixing the stabilizers. I was alone on the station, detective.
So you panicked. Flipped the switch?
Panicked? You assumed that I didn't know what I was doing. Acted out of fear? Nerves? No. I knew exactly what I was doing when I reset the reaction that would blow the entire chain of relay stations and close those fucking wormholes forever. I mean, at the time, I thought it would be for good. But since Project Exodus is being reopened by Exoterra at the behest of Homebase, I had to come forward. It needs to be stopped. To answer your question about why I came out of hiding. Let's not go—
That already sounds like a confession. Okay. Continue.
I don't know what my lawyer knows, or is allowed to know. But that doesn't matter. There are far greater things to consider here than me, or even the firm. Homebase is the only thing that matters. You see, if Project Exodus resumes and the wormholes connecting us to the Andromeda are opened again, we would be asking the devil himself to step into our reality. Do you understand? Can you understand the urgency of what I'm telling you?
The devil? What are you talking about? Maybe I should get a shrink in here.
Wait, Okay. Give me a moment. I just need to... Devil was a figure of speech. There I was on the day, moments before blowing up the relay, alone in the middle of nowhere, closer to Andromeda than to home base, at the very edge of our galaxy. The only two people in the radius of 1,000 light-years were in radio blackout on the last planet before the void between the two galaxies. No lights, life support suspended, and the gates to a place that human thoughts cannot fully grasp were opened before me. I peered into that place, and what stared back at me? I wish I hadn't seen it again. But my mind was made up. My heart was still. I knew what needed to be done. I had known it since the first time that the wormhole opened unprompted several months before. I might not have known what I was up against back then, but I was prepared for it this time. The plan was in motion. My hand was on the switch, and I had made my peace with the collateral. I just had to wait for Buzz and Wrench to finish the job so that the wormhole relay would stabilize and I could restore power to the station. That needed to happen first, so that the shockwave of the explosion on station number 3 would carry throughout the relay and close the entire wormhole pathway for good.
Premeditated. Barely any remorse. It's not looking good, Link. Add to that 5 months it took you to come forward with your confession.
I was in my protective suit just in case. Gripping the lever next to the controls that engage and disengage the wormhole. Hands steady. Eyes fixed on it as it was moving closer to me. Moving out of its twisted reality and crawling into the station. This one was even more intense. It was angrier. Nastier.
What?
What was it? Fuck if I know. Evil incarnate coming out of the wormhole and closer to me, ready to kill.
Chuck. Hey, Chuck. Call Dr. Zalowski. We have a live one over here.
You've already decided that I'm crazy.
That's not my job, Link. Zalowski will determine your state of mind when she gets here. You can continue talking in the meantime if you want. I got nothing better to do.
I suggest you don't say another word, and I suggest you get the hell out of here. My counsel, I don't want a lawyer, detective.
I'm afraid it's out of our hands now. It all depends on Zalowski's report.
Damn it! Fine. But I'm getting this off my chest one way or another. I don't know if I'll be allowed to do it again. Don't interrupt me anymore. Both of you.
You have about 15 minutes until the doc gets here. That's all I can do.
Out of the question!
Shh!
Where was I? Half a year before I arrived on station number 3, Wrench and Buzz had come back from the planet to find my predecessor in the same spot where I had been, with her hand on the lever. She already planned it all out, had the whole thing in place. My only job was to implement the plan again and do what needed to be done. To do what she was prevented from finishing. When I first found her plans for collapsing the wormhole relay in the chief's quarters after relieving the acting chief engineer of duty, I thought that she had lost her mind. She had already been taken off station and back to home base sometime earlier, so I never got her side of the story. I thought that she was one of those extremists wanting to take down Project Exodus. I rejoiced. Detective, I laughed. I thought, thank God this mad woman was stopped. Fool. Damn fool is what I was. This had nothing to do with politics. It was about salvation, but not the religious kind. No, not that. It was about the salvation of reality as we know it. Jonesy, that's what they called her, the chief whose place I took. She was a hard-headed woman, though, and smart, actually. Jonesy was the chief engineer on the very first station that was built. That same station that you could see from anywhere in the northern hemisphere before I took out the relay. Earth Station at home base. The key point and hub of our exodus out of this galaxy. What a name she was back then. A fixture in everybody's home. I remember the day when they opened the first wormhole and I saw Jonesy on the Holo News explaining the whole process. She was my hero. Jones would take us out into the stars further than we've ever been. How could I have ever doubted her? How could I have ever thought that she had lost her mind and acted against everything that she ever stood for?
Do we really need a history lesson?
It seems that we do, Detective. Because we all forgot who she was when we collectively decided that she went crazy. Did anyone from the firm or home base actually investigate her claims about the wormholes?
I think that question is directed at you, Thompson.
I'm not at liberty to say. Of course not. They've been spreading the same lies about me for the past 5 months, and I'm a nobody. Chief engineer on station 3 out of 30. I always wondered why they brought someone of her standing to that station. My initial guess was that her expertise was needed the most there, since it was the ficklest station in the relay. But now, I'm not so sure. I suspect that Exoterra were trying to shut her up and get her as far from home base as they could, making her sound like a crazy... Look, I don't care what you have to say about that, Thompson. Not now. Not after what I saw and what I did to save Earth. You think all those dead station engineers don't weigh on my conscience? And that I don't constantly think about all the others that were EVA in the moment of the explosion of the relay? That are forever lost in the midway between our galaxy and Andromeda?
Shame none of this will be admissible in court if you plead insanity.
But I had to do it. I had to destroy everything, regardless of the human casualties. There was no other way that I knew. At that moment, I was the only person standing between home base and...
The devil?
You mock me, Detective. Just like everyone else in Project Exodus did when I tried telling them about what I had witnessed on the station before going through with the plan. Rest assured, they were notified about what I came to understand. I'm sure Jonesy must have submitted many reports on the occurrences as well. The wormholes are not just bridges between 2 points in space, Detective. They have their own rules of reality. And it seems, also, of life. On the day when the wormhole opened again during my command, I had to decide then and there if I was going to allow that perverted existence to enter our own and potentially change everything. I doubt we would be sitting here and talking like this. I would even go so far as to say that we probably would not even be here at all. Let me paint you a picture of what I was up against when I arrived at the station, so that you can understand me and my position better, because I can see the reservation in your stare. First, I had 2 insubordinate engineers who thought they knew everything about everything. They had no respect for me or my credentials, since they had been on that station from the moment it was built. Didn't even give me a chance in normal circumstances, those two, let alone after what happened as my time on the station progressed. Less and less, as things became more complicated between us, and more dangerous. Second, I was in charge of the very last station in our system that had the most unstable wormhole engagement of all of them. We suspected that this was due to the conditions on the planet where we had placed the stabilizers. Not to go into too much detail, but placing the stabilizers on the planet and its orbit was the only solution in this particular case. There was no other way we could find around it, even with years of problem solving by the best physicists, engineers, and technicians in Project Exodus. Naturally, you would say at this point, the stress got to me, and even Jonesy before that. Isolated, terrible working conditions, the pressure of keeping the station together, sure, all valid points against me, and the preservation of my mental stability. However, my first designation in Project Exodus was far out into the void on station number 22. I could handle the isolation. Hell, I was there alone for 2 months without a backup crew at one point. How did blowing up the relay not occur to me then?
The more pressing question is, how did nothing strange happen on station number 22, or any other station for that matter?
I can't answer that, Detective. At least, not with complete certainty. I wish I could blame it all on an Exoterra and home base cover-up. But I'm afraid it might not be as simple as that. Besides, I'm an engineer. My job is to open, close, and stabilize the wormholes for space travel. You can say that my guess would be as good as yours. Or Thompson's.
Well, a little bit better than ours, I'd like to think.
Listen, whatever the wormholes are hiding could become an entirely new field of research. That's not what we're here for, is it? And I asked that you don't interrupt me.
Oh, Link, but isn't that exactly why you're here, out of your own free will? To tell us what you think you saw that made you destroy all those stations with a single pull of a lever, after planning it out so thoroughly?
I already said that Jonesy planned it out. Why are you purposefully twisting my words, Detective? You're implicating her.
So you were just an accomplice? Is that what you're implying?
No, that's not what I said. God, let me think. Let's go back several steps to a few months before the main incident. To the first time the wormhole opened without our interference. To the first time when I realized that we were dealing with something previously unthinkable. On the day in question, Wrench was off station on some private matter, and Buzz was recovering in his quarters from a 2-day EVA stint. I was manning the station by myself, since there were no planned tests with wormhole engagement, and not much needed doing. To put the timeline in perspective of Project Exodus, this was happening very close to the day of the official opening of the relay. Just a few more tests were on the roster to smooth out the technicalities and better the functionality of the stations in the relay. Very soon, civilians would have been able to cross from one galaxy to another. We were very careful around the controls and following instructions from home base. There was no room for error. And yes, Detective, before you can comment, the pressure on me as chief engineer to get everything just right was even higher. Growing by the minute.
You know, I was going to comment that it's interesting how you were also alone the first time that this thing happened. But don't let me stop you. Please, continue.
Oh, no. Buzz woke up when it opened, startled to wake by the alarms. He was right there on the deck with me. He didn't just see the thing in the wormhole too, Detective. Buzz almost got obliterated by it. Damned coward. I told him that we needed to let everyone know about what happened, but no, he didn't even want to tell Wrench, let alone inform Exoterra and Home Base. Buzz thought that he would end up just like Jonesy, in an asylum, shamed and ridiculed. Like you're treating me now, Detective. As I was saying, we were close to D-Day. Very soon a lot of people would be going inside those wormholes, thinking that they would have been safe to do so. As safe as taking a shuttle to Mars, right?
I guess...
Wrong. When that wormhole opened, there were a few minutes between Buzz arriving to assist me in performing an override to forcefully shut it down, and me noticing the creature. Was I worried? Sure. There had always been the chance of the wormholes opening unprompted. Moreover, this station had so many problems already that I simply thought it was a malfunction in the stabilizers. We had changed the main conductors 3 times by then, since they just kept corroding from the acid in the planet's atmosphere. My worry didn't include a monster coming out of the bend in space-time. Shit, that sort of thing wouldn't even occur to me. My imagination deals with different things that include problem-solving of a practical nature. Not the devil.
There's that word again.
Whatever it was, does calling it a creature or a thing make you feel more comfortable, Detective? Makes me feel the same, to be honest. The same fear. The same visceral churning of my insides as a reaction to the acknowledgement that something utterly other than what I know as a living being was moving into my field of view. As I was working on the override, Buzz burst into the engineering deck. The alarms were still going, and the entire room was filled with intense red light. I expected Buzz to join me at the consoles, but he was standing just a few steps away from the wormhole when I glanced up. He was frozen there, and glaring inside. Only a weak force field keeping him from being sucked into its vortex. Instead of that, however, against the forces moving everything on our end into the point far off in the void of space connected to station number 4, something was crawling towards the shield. Toward Buzz. Buzz! Buzz! I called out to him. His jaw dropped as he was gaping at the thing, my entire body shaking. I could barely compute what I was seeing, let alone go out there and get him. "Get out of there!" I screamed after him, barely overpowering the sound of the alarms. No movement from Buzz, not even a twitch. But the creature sure was moving. I guess I can call it that. For whatever it was in its physiognomy, moving or crawling don't seem to be apt descriptors. Nothing would be. It was twisting and turning and managing the most primal forces of being that were ripping through the wormhole like it was nothing. Time itself was being pulled onwards. Yet this creature was making strides toward Buzz. The station. Me. I doubted the shield would hold, you see. At that moment, it felt like there was barely anything between us. No more than a curtain. Would a curtain stop a charging tiger?
How did you stop?
The first time, we were lucky. The station still had power, so I could override and collapse the wormhole without much damage to the station, or the relay, and without letting that thing get one more step closer to us. That wasn't a chance I was willing to take the second time around. On a side note, I noticed that I finally have your attention.
You've had my attention since the moment you arrived at my desk this morning, Link. I was just expecting, well, not this, to put it bluntly. Tell me one thing. Did Buzz give you any explanation of his own about what happened?
We barely spoke about it. He was in shock and had trouble doing anything until Wrench returned a few days later. And when his bestie was back on the station, Buzz pretended that I was talking nonsense, that there were no irregularities at all. He even told Wrench that the wormhole opening must have been my miscalculation, my mistake. I'm not going to lie. That hurt. I saved his goddamned life! And when I eventually confronted him alone, he confessed what I already told you. There was no chance in hell that he would admit to seeing the creature. During these 5 months, I did a lot of introspection. Soul searching, if you will. You said that I show no remorse for what I did, but that simply isn't true. Could there have been any other way? I don't know. The only firm conclusion that I came up with was that I never wanted to see that creature again. Or let anyone else see it. For months after the incident, I could see the shape of the creature in my dreams, my fantasies. The mere image and acknowledgement of its existence clouded my every waking thought. It still does. I still think that this thing and others like it are somewhere in their dimension going about their wicked lives as we do, waiting for another opening to move into our plane of existence. But we should never again cross paths. I stand firm behind my decision. Not for lack of remorse for the human lives that were lost, but from the conviction that we and those extra-dimensional beings should not exist in the same realm, not ever, do you understand?
What did they look like?
I don't think I can do them. I don't think I can do them justice.
Try, regardless.
The first time I saw the creature, it was hard to tell anything about it. Buzz was the one that had a really good look at it. Too good, by the sight of him. The deck was drenched in the red light of the alarm, and the sound of it was maddening. I had a hard time focusing on anything else apart from the console at first. That override was a piece of work. The hack job that was done on it after Jonesy's attempts to destroy the relay took me a long time to fix. Even longer if you account for the fact that I had to reinstall Jonesy's switch as well. Before Buzz rushed onto the deck, I didn't even look up at the wormhole portal. Detective. I was alone with it for those few minutes, and I didn't even know it. I wish I could say that this experience made me braver when I was truly alone on this station the second time the wormhole opened out of nowhere. It made it worse. To remind you, There was no power on the station then. There was no shield between me and the thing that appeared then. When I eventually raised my gaze toward the portal, all I could see was a shape. A dark cutout of a thing that was at least 10 times more massive compared to Buzz, who was standing on this side of the shield. I couldn't wrap my mind around it. Looking into the portal was a mind-bending experience in itself. Adding this thing, I don't know how. It looked so giant that my brain was telling me it could not possibly fit inside the vortex, much less pass through the portal. But, Detective, the portal has no size, no dimensions as we know and experience them, not the way normal space does. If the creature crossed over, it might have been as small as Buzz and me. Smaller, even. Or it could have taken the shape of the entire station, the exoplanet we were orbiting, the entire galaxy, for all I know. That was all I could see before the override kicked in and I could finally collapse the wormhole. In the last few seconds before the unearthly light of the vortex was extinguished, the shape of the creature moved in such ways that I could never put into words. It was almost like it sped up its movement, and for a mere fraction of a second, I thought that it was on the deck, that it had crossed over. Thank God it hadn't. When the wormhole collapsed, the alarm stopped immediately. The deck was now back to its artificial white light, casting harsh, dark shadows on the floor. Buzz was still motionless, so I called out to him again. I was still shaken from the whole ordeal, and it took a bit of self-convincing to step onto the platform to collect him. After a few moments, I found myself standing next to Buzz with my hand gripping his shoulder. I thought that he was whispering something, but I couldn't quite catch what it was. I was too afraid to ask. It took 15 minutes before either one of us moved, and a slow walk to the living quarters until Buzz finally spoke to me. "Good night," was all he said. Then he walked into his cabin and stayed there for the next few days, not coming out even to eat, much less to do his job. I didn't have the heart to order him to do anything. Not that he would listen to me, anyway. I had 2 months in my escape pod to think about what I saw on my last day on station number 3 before I pulled the lever. And still, I can't recall the thing in perfect detail. That first glimpse overshadows all my attempts to remember the moment I took a better look at it. All I can add is that I could tell that it was evil. It wasn't its shape, the way its form stood against the surreal light or the wormhole, nor its ungodly movements. I could see it in the...
Seems like Zulowski has arrived. I'm afraid your time is over, Link.
Wait, I'm not done. I can tell that I still haven't convinced you about why I did what I did, Detective.
As I said, it's not me.
But you're the one that matters.
Why, Link?
Isn't it obvious?
And here's Chuck to take you.
No. No. Please, give me a few more minutes to make my case. Project Exodus needs to be stopped. The relay must not be re-established. The wormholes must remain closed. You have to believe me. You have to do something about it. It all rests on you, Detective.
My fate is sealed. It's all on you now.
You know, that Buzz wasn't such a coward as Link made him out to be. There was a rumor spreading a while back that there was a witness account of what had been happening on the station before the incident. It was recovered from the station number 3 shuttle's black box. Seems like Buzz had a lot to say before he died. Now, I personally hadn't heard that recording, Thompson. And I'll even admit that I never truly believed that it existed until now. Even when my partner tried convincing me that he had listened to the whole thing himself, I couldn't believe it. However, if I'm remembering what he told me correctly, there seemed to be a lot in that recording about a strange occurrence in the wormhole that terrified Buzz. Maybe even a lot to corroborate Link's statement here, come to think of it. Huh. Shame that his 2 associates never reached home base and perished adrift in their shuttle. 2 people are much harder to make disappear than a recording, wouldn't you say? And 4 eyewitnesses' accounts are far more difficult to disregard than 1 or 2.
No comment, Detective Wright. I'll contact you after the psych eval of my client is over. Goodbye.
This is Detective Frankie Wright, ending preliminary interview with suspect in case 371/27. Further steps in the investigation to be determined by Dr. Emilia Zelowski. Preliminary observations by primary investigator on the case will be attached as interview addendum.
Hey, sci-fi horror fans. It's Thomas. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to give it a thumbs up. Also, if you'd like to become an official member of our channel, you can do so by clicking on the join button. Memberships start at only $5. Until next time, everyone, and remember, stay cosmic.